Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks everyone who is watching live in the Facebook group. Today's going to be really fun. Anytime getting together with Jodi Ledley is a great day. Jodi is first and foremost to me a friend, and to anyone who she meets, she's such a caring, loving, kind, and generous person. And she wears many hats. She's a wife, she's a caregiver, she's a mother, she's a teacher. She's, and we were just discussing this, there's no name for it, but she shows horses. She loves animals. She's a farmer. She wants to give away all of her garlic.
Yes.
Vegetables to save the world, because that's what she's all about, loving people and saving people from hurt and from sickness and anything that causes pain. She's also a brilliant cancer researcher and scientist, and she's on a mission to save the world from cancer. So it's my honor and pleasure to introduce you to Jodi. And Jodi, I'm so excited for you to be here and to talk to everyone and share your passion and your research and what you have found to be true in your research and practice. So yeah, welcome, Jodi. Thank you.
Thanks, Bailey. I'm super excited to be here. I'm really excited to talk about bacteria and its relation to cancer, but you know that.
Yes.
I almost couldn't sleep last night. I'm just
Oh,
just very, possibly knowing what we're dealing with is just, it's very comforting to me.
yeah, that's great. So I'd like to start, if you could share briefly about your own healing story, how your life changed with that.
Well, it's actually close to 9 years now
Wow.
that I had been sick for a previous 3 years. And I mean, devastating neurologic problems, extreme migraines, like, I would just vomit for days and like from the pain, and the pain was so severe. I saw 19 different neurologists, and they recommended, all sorts of things, but they recommended an implant for my spinal cord to control pain. And they really had no hope for me. There was nothing that was going to help. But I did have a neurologist that said, I don't know why your nerves are all rapid firing. And this man was he was extremely upset to give me this news, that he just didn't know what to do with me. And when I went home, I happened to Google, what makes nerves rapid fire, and I got excitotoxins, and they're basically things put in our food to make them addictive, and in fragrance, and they make nerves rapid fire. So, but interestingly, later I found out, the connection there is glutamate. It's high glutamate levels. So everyone, now knows about glutamate and cancer. So, I removed this from my diet, and it became like within 2 weeks, I became a new person. So that, huge believer in the miracles of food.
That's amazing. Thank you, Jodi. And so how did that set you up to be Casey's caregiver and advocate. Can you share about his diagnosis and treatment?
Well, let me back up. After this, I was a national speaker for the Weston Price organization. And so we were thinking that we were doing the most we could do. We were growing grass-fed, had our own cattle, and we raised our chickens and turkeys and all that. And then when he was diagnosed, I just could not believe it. I could not believe it, because we had done so much. We were eating out at all. We were eating all organic. But I guess the lesson there was, 2 weeks of no animal on square one, and we had a major difference in the tumor. Just unbelievable. But, the reason why we did that, the reason why we switched to square one, we needed to up the level. But we had been listening to, well, Casey my husband, had been forced to listen to Chris's interviews for years. Okay. Because my dad died at 39 of cancer. My husband was diagnosed at 38. And here I am in the same house. We're already at like maximum, what we thought was maximum effort level. And anyhow, we were just, everything happened for a reason, and we were primed. We had additional hope with that method. And, as you can see from those pictures, and he's still doing well, that there's just no end to the power of food. God's pharmacy.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So on square one, Casey had, for 2 weeks, he had a tremendous change in the look of his tumor. It was bloody and blistered, and then it was less bloody, less blistered, and the coloration changed.
Right. And the second picture was actually from a sigmoid scope. People would probably wonder, like, why would he get 2 colonoscopies? Well, he didn't. It was a sigmoid. So just a quick, peek in there. And, that day we got really devastating news because we thought he was stage 2 and he was actually stage 3. But as I was sitting there, I was in there with them and they had it on the big screen, the picture, like it was live.
Wow.
I looked at it and I was like, wow, that looks so much different than, the pictures from the colonoscopy. And, that's what got me home on the 3-hour drive. Was the idea that, wow, this is really, it really looks a lot different. It looks like the body was trying to heal, in just a short time frame. And then to move forward with that, by the time he had surgery, which was somewhere between 6 or 8 weeks later, because they wanted to deny him the surgery because he didn't want to do chemo or radiation. The pathology report showed tumor infiltrating lymphocytes, which is, associated with a better response. So I just feel like, that's evidence that things were helping before surgery and hopefully, and afterwards. And afterwards, as far as testing, he did the Greek test. So he tested the circulating tumor cells and those have been declining. So, we just pray that path is going to keep happening in it and, stay at Healthy Island. That's what we want to do.
That's awesome. And his circulating tumor cells, is it about 4 now? With the
last time we tested, which was he's almost 4 years out. He'll be 4 years in March.
Wow.
But it's probably been 1.5 years or 2 years since we've tested him. We were pretty consistent, like every 6 months. So we know that it dropped from like 6.2 down to it's either 4.0 or 3.9. I'd have to look. But the trend was downward. We need to do that again. We're hoping to do it again soon. But there's always the thought in my head, we don't have any long-term survivors that have ever had their circulating tumor cells tested. So I'm not sure in my mind. I want to see that before I go spend another $1,000. It's a good indication, but I'm very data driven. So I like what I'm seeing, but I'm not 100% sure. What about people like Anne Fonfa, who's had cancer for 25 years? I'm sure she levels, maybe it's that you can, how well your body deals with whatever level of circulating tumor cells you have. That might be a better way to judge that.
Yeah. And Casey's cancer was rectal cancer, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what you became most passionate about researching, right?
Oh my gosh, yes. There is a real problem with people under 40 with rectal cancer and colon cancer. The estimated, if the trajectory doesn't change by 2030, I think it's 20 to 24-year-old person in 2030 will have a 124% increase, in rectal cancer. And colon cancer is slightly lower. Wow. But I wonder, what is happening. And, if you look at the rates now and then you add 120 some percent to that, is this going to be everyone in 10 years? I became really obsessed with what the cause is. I don't want, this trickling down to my kids because they're going to have a much higher risk. So that, that led me to, the relationship between bacteria and cancer, because a lot of those studies on young people, they're calling it biologically different, and they're saying that it's a microbiome problem.
And so that has led to you adapting the bacterial origin of cancers theory, correct?
Yeah, the first thing, the first bacteria that I found, I mean, there's just it's called Fusibacterium, and they pretty much have determined it to be the cause of colon cancer. And I mean, there is endless amounts of data on Fusibacterium and colon cancer, and that just led to how is it stopped? What makes it resistant? All these different things. I found one study. It was actually a New York Times article, and it said they finally started looking at tumor samples for this bacteria, and what they found was the bacteria were burrowing into the cells, like they could see them burrowing into the cells, and there's just there's so many things it's going to be hard to make this interview short. I'm going to try to not ramble.
I have a question for you when you're done. Okay, you're okay.
I'll pause it for now. It'll come back.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, it's no harm in sharing, a lot of information. But so, I mean, there's not only the Fusibacterium, but H. pylori burrowed into the stomach, the cells in the stomach.
With the H. pylori, they were showing that, because it was burrowing into the stomach, it was causing inflammation, which was the driver, that created cancer. Now, when I look up information on bacteria, I have found pretty much every single tumor marker can be elevated by bacteria. CEA, let's see, PSA, and there's a study on PSAs where they gave the people antibiotics and it decreased like 42%. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Just anything that you can think of is, as far as something that will pick up whether or not you have cancer, is bacteria related. And I find something every day. It's like, I've created the slideshow where I'm adding all of this in one place so that people can flip through it and look. And then I have to add more, like every day. It's going to be never ending. Last night I was looking at LMR, which is lymph to mono ratio, that some people use like in a CBC to determine whether or not somebody's going to have progression. Well, I work in a lab, and when we see monocytes that are elevated, it means a bacterial infection. So, I mean, there's just all these little pieces that that fit together that I think are overwhelming evidence.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to compile a short list, like you said. There's tons of things. So, I mean, a few others are that cancer cell genomes contain bacterial DNA. Anaerobic bacterial blood infections are associated with a significant increase in the risk of colon cancer. Bacteria can cause.
I want to tell. I want to tell people about that, because this.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so at work we do blood cultures all the time. If somebody has a blood infection, we figure out what it is. And I recently found a study that said if you have a Clostridium infection, you're 42 times more likely to develop cancer within the next year.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I had no idea.
And it had other figures for different types of bacteria, but the conclusion was at the bottom of the study. It says this vigorous search for colorectal carcinoma should be done in any patient growing C. septicum on blood cultures with or without any symptoms. So when you think about whether cancer is genetic or not, well, that certainly isn't there. I mean, that's very fast.
Yeah. So what among the list, I mean, how would you rank the evidence for this theory? Like what pieces of the evidence would you say are like most compelling? If you can go down the line a little bit.
Well, if we're just talking about, I mean, I'll just focus on colon cancer since that's my passion.
Yeah.
There is a study on Fusibacterium, and it shows that the metastatic sites for the liver, the bacteria was identical to the Fusibacterium strain that was found within the cells, even 10 years apart. the metastasis site matched. They tried to graft. Let me see here. Okay, none of the tumors without Fusibacterium were associated with positive liver metastasis. So the tumors that didn't have Fuso didn't have metastasis. The higher level of Fusibacterium in the tumors, the lower survival time of these people. And then the thing is, when they tried to transplant Fusibacterium tumor, they tried to transplant colon cancer tumors into mice. They couldn't do it without the bacteria. So it did not take.
And
so
yeah, and I mean, you in your presentation you have a study on spouses, how they have a higher risk of developing cancer.
Let me tell you the one little part that I have that's super important on this. I'm looking at my slide now. Took Fusibacterium from a tumor and added other human colon cancer cell lines. Under the microscope, Fusibacterium bacteria from the primary tumor invaded the human colon cancer cell lines. And then once the lines were infected with Fusibacterium, they saw within the cell vesicle-like structures. So they could see it happening. Now, the other piece of this puzzle is there's another study where they gave a fecal transplant from someone with colon cancer to a mouse, and the mouse developed cancerous polyps. So if it's transferable, I mean, that's really something. And that leads me to what you were saying about spouses. Spouses of people with colon cancer have an increased risk of getting it. So, that sounds pretty pathogenic.
Absolutely. It certainly does to me. And sorry, my video went off again.
I see that.
I know, not behaving this week. Okay, so after that, what would you say is next most compelling?
Well, if stem cells, they know that the difference between a stem cell and a cancerous stem cell is bacteria. Bacteria within it. There's just so many things. I mean, like, what is the body's response to intracellular pathogens? Inflammation and walling off the area. I mean, could walling it off be the tumor? Other things that are pretty convincing are, I keep a lot of lists. I'm like Excel maniac here. And I've got a list of substances that have caused remission. And I noticed somebody asked a question about colloidal silver, and there is a case on a stage 4 person who was on hospice, and he had squamous cell carcinoma of the head and neck, and it said refractory, so he never had any success with regular conventional treatment, but he cured himself with like 120 mLs of colloidal silver a day. The dosage and everything is in there, so you'd have to check on that for sure. And that's on the survival chart. But if one substance can take out cancer, I mean, colloidal silver is very antibacterial. Other substances that have caused people to go into remission, you've got curcumin for Dyneke Ferguson, who had multiple myeloma. You've got Glenn Sabin with the EGCG from green tea. I think he had CLL, and his is a Harvard documented case. You've got Ann Cameron with carrots. Carrots, the falcarinol is very antibacterial. Pretty much everyone that has had, if you look at all the natural survivors, or just say any cancer survivor, has done something very, very antibacterial, or on the flip side, has grown protective bacteria, bacteria species P. So that's why, Coley's toxins. I know you're a fan. And, Coley's toxins has entered my mind a lot lately when you look at the history of chemo, knowing that, strep bacteria from the soil was like the first chemo. I mean, pretty much every chemo's an antibiotic. We've got radiation, which is another treatment that also treats infections. Gosh, so much. I will say one more before I stop my endless rabbit hole on that. I found something really crazy, and it's white blood cell donors from young people. So what they did was they took white blood cells from young people, which is crazy and, in itself, and they gave them to people with cancer. And what they had was extreme necrosis of tumors. So then, my mind kind of asked, well, why did that happen? Well, white blood cells, they fight infection. So, I mean, I've circled this a million times, and it's just more fascinating the longer you look. And I invite anyone, to disprove it. I've tried, but I welcome that because we need some great minds on this. This could be, knowing what something is would surely help figure out what to do about it.
Yeah. And then, I mean, PET scans, it's really frustrating because
PET scans can't tell the difference between bacteria or tumors.
Yeah, and many times they'll just assume it's cancer and then go to operate, put a person under the knife, and then it turns out not to be cancer.
Right. And back to, them going right to cancer. I'm just really, with all of this evidence, why are we not, in research, people's tumors get tested, because that's what the researchers wanting to test. But why in the world, like, how have we went so long without testing tumors for bacteria? It's crazy to me.
Yeah. There's a question about Coley's toxins. Can you explain it a little more?
Yes. Coley's toxins is an injection of strep bacteria. Now, I think the official explanation is usually to induce an immune response, because the immune response is the most effective thing at taking out cancer cells. But, strep just keeps coming up when you look at cancer cures, discovery early of chemo with the strep bacteria. And that bacterium is probably the number one cause of spontaneous remission. Even people, like on my survivor chart, I have different cases of remission, and strep bacteria is in there quite a bit. Somebody's had a strep infection and it's just wiped out, it's wiped out the cancer. And I think the reason is because, not only does it produce an immune response, but anything that can get inside that cell to compete with other bacteria be effective. I mean, they're using viruses to treat cancer. Mayo Clinic has a study on measles curing. I'm not sure what type of cancer it was. I think it was leukemia, but there's all sorts of interesting studies. There's one with Plasmodium, which is malaria, where they actually gave people malaria, and then they're going to let them have malaria for 3 months. And then after the 3 months, they're going to give them artemisinin to get rid of the malaria that got rid of the cancer, hopefully. So
that's amazing.
That trial hasn't finished, but I'm really interested in that.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing about the results on that too. And recently, I met a woman who's a leukemia survivor. She had it 4 times. She was in elementary school, middle school, high school, and then college. It kept coming back. She would get chemo every time.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but then now she's 18 years in remission. And I said, did you change anything? Did anything change, like, in your life, or that you did? And she said, no, but I did get this infection with the last bout of cancer. And I just I got goosebumps and I started to cry, and she got goosebumps. because this was the first time I happened upon a case like this. She had an infection in her face and it went down her chest, and it wouldn't stop even with antibiotics. So they did exploratory surgery and they found necrotic tissue and they removed it. And that was it. Like, no more cancer ever in the last almost 2 decades.
That is amazing. That gives me chills. There was, this morning, I was looking at something called Bacteriotherapy. They dance around it. There's just all sorts of ways they're using bacteria to cure people, but it was injections of different bacteria and also bacteria using probiotics. So their purpose was, one bacteria to take out the other.
Yes, yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
The probiotics or
the bacteria taking out other bacteria?
Well, every bacteria has another bacteria that kills it. Okay, and it's very much like that with yeast and with viruses as well. Any of those things, it's like a turf war in your body. So, a lot of the research is in what bacteria will take out, like Fusibacterium or other bacteria that's related to cancer, like H. pylori. They have, they've done everything from nanoparticles in bacteria to try to take it out to engineering bacteria so that it won't be pathogenic, but it will take out the bacteria they need it to. It has just, the research that's happening it's really amazing, and I hope it actually gets to the people.
Yeah. Someone just commented on Facebook, sign me up for some strep pills.
Well, what's funny about that is I do a lot, I do rapid strep testing at work, and every time somebody's positive, I'm like, oh, what could be done with this?
I know. Sometimes I say, to people, it's almost like you kind of hope you get an infection, but one that's controlled.
Well, that's another thing I'm wondering right now with coronavirus is, are people that get it going to have a better outcome? It's a thought, because, any type of febrile illness will reduce your risk of cancer. So
yeah,
maybe there's a good side. I don't know.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. Yeah, I think, I know it's hard. It's not available in the US, Coley's toxins, unfortunately, but it's something that I found in the Spontaneous Remission Project. If you look at I think their introduction is like 53 pages or something, and they have a chapter each on different like systems of the body and cancer in those areas. And I just see, like, over and over again, like infection, Coley's toxins, and then even surgery and biopsy, but the infections are really intriguing to me.
I would love to. I can get access to these departments. Of course, this would never be allowed. But if I could do, what I wanted to at work, I would go up into the histology department and I would get a tumor, and then I would take it over to the micro department, and then I would determine what is in it. And then, if we find a bacteria, what we normally do is we put it on a plate, and then we put the sample on a plate, and then we put antibiotic pills on there too to find out what's effective. And what would be interesting would be to do that, put strep on there, put some other bacteria on there, put some flavonoids on there, see which thing is most effective, because when they study resistant bacteria, they're studying flavonoids, they're studying enzymes, and they're studying other pathogenic bacteria. There's just, this could, if somebody actually targeted the organism for each type, like for instance, prostate cancer, they think is driven by a bacteria that causes acne. And there's tons of data on that. And, what if we were just able to target exactly what it is? That just would make it would make the route much shorter. And would make a whole lot more sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Same for me also.
I'm sitting here. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, something just popped in my head that I didn't mention when you said, basically convince me that bacteria, is the cause of cancer. Bacteria infections are responsible for just about every genetic mutation that I can find. P53, big time. P10, I mean, just the list goes on and on. MSI, PDL1, and then, what, I'm just thinking of the list of things, what are cancer patients normally low in? They're low in vitamin D.
Right.
Vitamin D, there are studies that show that bacteria block the vitamin D receptors.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and there's another study showing that eradication of intracellular pathogens normalizes the vitamin D levels of people. And
Wow.
I can tell you that, see, I did square one with Casey as well. So we've been doing the same thing pretty much. His is a little more intense level because, the money goes to him. All the, the majority of the juice goes to him, et cetera, supplements. But his vitamin D level was, I think, 20. It was either 19 or 20 when he was diagnosed.
Wow.
His is now like 80. And because I'm lazy and I'm not good at taking supplements, I haven't taken vitamin D for a while, but I did get a vitamin D test not too long ago, and it was in the 50s. And I was like, wow, I was shocked that it could hold its level. And then it made me think, well, maybe it can hold its level now. Maybe that's why, we test a lot of young people for vitamin D and then they never have normal levels. So that correlates with their cancer rate too. Their cancer rate is higher.
Yeah. I mean, oh my gosh, there's so many things like nagalase, which is excreted by cancer cells. It comes from bacteria too.
Yeah, I was so shocked to learn that. I mean, they think nagalase levels are proportional to the tumor burden, and here nagalase comes from bacteria. I mean, fibrinogen, they're using fibrinogen in, alternative cancer care, and that is also reflective of a bacterial infection. There's just so much.
Yeah. Anything that kills tuberculosis will kill cancer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Go ahead.
I'm going through the list.
I know. So for everyone listening, Bailey's going through my slideshow, which I appreciate because there's like 100 and I don't know how many slides.
I won't go through all of them.
But I've discovered that anything that kills, there's like a trio here: TB, malaria, plasmodium. Well, that's malaria. Mycoplasma. So anything that kills any of those, they're all intracellular, I believe. So anything that kills those is going to be effective for cancer. Now, the problem is that there are a lot of things that target bacteria, which off-label drugs are one of them. Every off-label drug that I can find is extremely antibacterial. So when I look at colon, I'm trying to find people that are doing well consistently with that method, and I'm not seeing a lot. I'm seeing more so in the natural world a consistent, steady, stable disease versus drugs. And so why is that? Like, I feel like if it's a bacteria, why is that not working if they're all antibacterial? And resistance, I think it is what it comes down to. And there are flavonoids that are known to reverse resistance, like EGCG in green tea, genistein, which is a derivative of soy. But the other thing I learned the other day is I was trying to figure this out in my mind, like why this should be working. It looks like it should work on paper. There are bacteria that can live 100 days with no food source, none.
That's crazy.
The idea of starving it, I think, maybe if you knew what it was, that would work better.
Yeah. It also reminds me of the Gerson therapy, because Gerson, he went from like curing migraines to curing tuberculosis to then curing cancer.
See, I'm telling you that TB thing, it's just always in there.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
Cindy mentioned in Facebook, MSI, that's me. What bacteria is connected with microsatellite instability?
Well, I don't know if it lists a specific bacteria, but I'm going to go with, oh, it does. There, I have a study right here, and it's Fusibacterium. So
Wow.
I don't know what type you have, but that is related to melanoma, to colon cancer, to there's pancreatic. There's several cancers that Fusibacterium is linked to, and it reminds me that that bacteria is also related to Smithia. And people think that HPV causes cervical cancer, but they've recently found that Smithia bacteria is where it starts. The bacteria opens, it creates a favorable environment, and then it allows the cells to let the virus in. So, but anyhow, I discovered the other day that those two are related. So,
wow, that's interesting. Cindy said it's endometrial.
okay, I would definitely research Smithia with that.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, and so so you're a cancer coach also, Jodi. How does this research influence how you coach people? Like,
Well, I definitely
strategy?
like it knowing. I think the number one thing is not doing anything to cause resistance. I mean, if you're going to do something powerful enough that could cause resistance, you better hope you kill it. That seems to be what I'm seeing in the tracking. I do a lot of tracking. I track cases. I have sheets and sheets of, people's cases and what they've done. And it just seems like flooding yourself with phytonutrients, it seems to be the steady, stable way, like maybe you could live with this instead of kill it way. I'm seeing several things that cause, major resistance and problems. Once it's resistant, that's really hard. There's, people wonder what is resistance. It's when you can't get inside the cell. There's these pumps, efflux pumps. Anything you try to put in there, it will spit out. That's anti-cancer. So when you look at the research on how to inhibit these pumps so that you can get something in there, it's always about flavonoids. So that to me, when I wonder like, why are the foods a more stable way for many people? I think it's because the flavonoids allow substances to get in the cells.
Interesting. So with antibiotics, it's kind of a it's
just like bacteria. It's the cause or the cure.
Right.
I mean, antibiotics can stop natural substances from working. I mean, it's kind of like immunotherapy. If your gut bacteria has been altered, immunotherapy doesn't work as well. It's very tricky, and it's the same thing with probiotics. Everybody thinks that probiotics are great, but I feel like it's like tinkering with your DNA. They've recently discovered, and it was an immunotherapy, one of the studies was immunotherapy, that your gut microbiome took longer to recover after antibiotics if you took probiotics. And it was because the good bacteria was taking out other good bacteria. And that's not what they intended, to find with this study. So I've created a list of bacteria. And some of the bacteria, there's Lactobacillus reuteri. It's known to take out Fusibacterium. So, and Lactobacillus as well. That's the protective one that keeps people from getting colon cancer. I have a list, that has different strains that are in probiotics and what they do. And I'm trying to, determine which ones kill the protective bacteria and make sure that I able to avoid, check if that's something that you feel like taking, check it and make sure these other strains aren't in there. We don't use probiotics, we used food because, an apple contains 100 million probiotic bacteria. So I just feel like that's safest until we know more. However, there is some sort of a trial going on with, I think it's Biome Health probiotic, and it is specific for colon cancer. And the strains that are in it are in there to disrupt biofilms. And I haven't been able to find anything bad about it. So, I wait. It's not something that like we would start taking. I would wait and see, what happens, unless, we were dealing with something that wasn't stable. Then, that would be the time where I would be like, well, you could try it.
Right. And everyone's microbiome is so different. It's hard to say.
And I'd like to add to the testing. I've had people say, well, I've, had my, my stool test said this. Well, that's different than tissue testing for tumors. So if you have a low amount of Fusibacterium in your stool, does not mean you have a low amount in your tumor.
Interesting. Someone said, how about herbs and supplements?
Yeah. Herbs, I'm a firm believer in herbs. We use a ton of spices every day. Everybody knows I'm the garlic girl, which, some people call an herb, but, garlic, there's just endless studies. Kills 34 tumor cell lines. I recently found a patent for a garlic IV.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's neat.
It really is. It really just, Chris Work always says, truth is simple. It could be simple. It really could be. The patent for this bacteria said, or the patent for the garlic said that cancer, hang on, got something on my screen. The patent was actually for herpes. Okay. So it was a viral patent, but it did also say that for resistant bacteria and malaria, I believe. So it was a real zinger on hitting every angle that it needed to hit. And the patent was relatively new, I think 2015. And it says right in there how to do it. I mean, they just they crushed the garlic and they extracted the juice and they mixed it with some saline. And I mean, you can read all about it there. It's if you look, find it. I think I shared it on my page. Pretty sure I did. But I mean, wouldn't that be great? There's a study on garlic that shows that it cleared up ascites. So
wow,
that would be
amazing.
It is amazing because that's a real obstacle for a lot of people and they're in the hospital. But you can look up, back to the herbs, you can look up any herb and see. I mean, I think it'd be really hard to find one that didn't have an anti-cancer mechanism. So, when you're eating your food, every bite that goes in, how much can you get in there? Think of how much you can get in there that is going to work for you.
Yeah. It's making me want to go juice right now.
It's making my mouth water for herbs. I have a jar and I have, it's like a pint mason jar, and I've layered it with organic parsley and cumin and cayenne pepper, and then a pepper mixture from our garden that we dehydrated, and turmeric. Back to the cumin. There's an interesting study on cumin that, cumin works like aspirin. So there's a clinical trial on aspirin and colorectal cancer. The data's not in yet, but a lot of people take aspirin for cancer, but aspirin can cause, I'm not sure which organism of the three that I always mention. It's probably TB. It can cause it to become resistant, but cumin that works just like aspirin does not cause it to become resistant. So there's these little tiny bits of information that if they were all gathered, we could have a much safer path, to get healthy. And I have to circle back to the parsley that is in this big mixture of spices that I put on everything. Parsley has like 12, dried parsley has like 12 times the amount of pigeonine as celery.
Oh,
so a lot of us,
that.
a lot of us people who juice, we do it for the pigeonine, but their dried parsley is a super, super good source. So just add that to your arsenal for extra potent power. And then supplements, Casey takes, maybe 5 or 6 supplements, not real big, big on them. I just feel like food for us is where it's at. I'm really sensitive to any kind of thing that's been processed. So, anytime you heat a protein, you create glutamate. There's this whole thing about glutamate that people don't know in the cancer world. Now, in the neurological world, they know it. But it makes me very sensitive to different powders and things. So, I don't know anyone in the neuro world that's been able to block their symptoms from glutamate with drugs. So diet is the way we stay symptom free.
Awesome. Someone asked how to spell Sneathia, and it's Sneathia. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, and Sneathia bacteria. It really makes me wonder about the garlic lemon mixture that Dr. Taleb came up with. I wonder if it would be really effective for that, because you've got antibacterial and antiviral all in one little real food supplement you can take. If Sneathia, Sneathia is bacteria and HPV is, is viral.
Cool. All right. Well, that's a lot of awesome information, Jodi. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Gosh, this could go
on forever.
It's so interesting.
I didn't even get to the I'm just going to say this. All the latest drugs for breast cancer and a lot of cancers are phytonutrient cocktails or creations from broccoli that are sulforaphane and indole-3. And sulforaphane can kill intracellular bacteria in 24 hours.
Wow.
So without causing the resistance. So I'm hoping and I'm thinking that a phytonutrient cocktail will be the answer that everyone can have without paying for it.
Amen. That's awesome. I love it, Jodi. Love you. And and says thank you both. So I guess, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for coming and for asking your great questions. Cindy said she's doing cartwheels here.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Thank you, Jodi, for taking time out of your super busy schedule to be with us and share your research.
Thank you, Bailey. Thanks for helping me get my information out to the world.
Aw, my pleasure. Hopefully see you all soon.
All right, bye.
All right, bye, everyone.